Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you all had a great Memorial Day weekend and got to enjoy a little extra time off, but it is back to the grind now. So today we're going to talk about writing great content. And you guys hear us talk a lot about writing fresh, unique content, but rarely do you hear us talk about what that actually means. What's the difference between great content and mediocre content? And how do you write it? So great content is the kind of stuff that's attractive to both your search engines and your readers. And appearing on page one of Google doesn't guarantee readers will open a page or stick around. So that really kind of is the key difference between mediocre content and great content. Is it's not just attracting your search engines, but it's also attractive to your readers. So today I'm going to kind of break it down and simplify the process so you can kind of get an idea of the different types of content, how to write headlines and titles, find your topics, and then that vital SEO element and all the little details that add up to make content great. So let's get into it. Really, there are three different content types and they all serve a very different purpose. Evergreen content is long-lasting and it's not going to lose its relevance over time, so it's a little bit more encyclopedic is how I like to refer to it. It's the things that are not going to lose relevance are things like what to do after a car accident. That's going to be relevant to anyone searching for this information year after year. But if you're posting something like which Virginia roadways are the most dangerous, this answer is probably going to change over time, so that would not fall under the evergreen content category. Oh, and I skipped ahead. Another great piece of evergreen content is a how-to guide. So like what to do after a car accident or how to report a dog bite. These are the kinds of things that are not going to change, and they're really helpful, information-rich pieces of content. Resource lists are great as well. So this is information for, if you're seeking help after spousal abuse, or if you need somewhere to look to when you've been in a car accident, you just need guidance and resources there. That's a great other option. I will say you've got to check those links every now and then just to make sure they're all working. They're still pointing to the most relevant pages. It's still helpful information. So keep that in mind if you're going to create those resource lists. Frequently asked questions are a good one too, because these rarely change. If it's something that people are still asking 2-3 years into your practicing a specific type of law or a specific type of medicine, and that's information that's going to stay relevant for a long time. And then industry definitions is a really good one too, because that's something that a lot of people who are kind of just entering into the world of a lawsuit are going to start hearing some buzzwords or legal jargon that they're not familiar with, and you can kind of be that resource for them to understand better and learn from your website. So evergreen content is not always going to drive a ton of traffic, but that's okay. If you have those like FAQs or industry definitions, it's helpful for people who are on your website. So if you have a blog post that says, what is unjust enrichment? You're probably not going to outrank Wikipedia, but a potential client who sees that on your site, you've improved his experience and it's going to keep him on your site for longer. So there's still a lot of benefit there, even if it's not driving tons of traffic. So time-sensitive content. Obviously, it has an expiration date. It's not quite the same as evergreen. It's stuff that's relevant and hot and recent. So things like accident reports. If there's a traffic accident in your area that caused a shutdown on the highway, that's a great piece of content if you practice car accident cases. New laws are a good one. Any changes in law can kind of spark people's interest, and if you've heard new laws going around recently, there have been tons and tons of articles and information sharing on social media. So new laws are a big thing to talk about, especially if it's kind of a hot button topic or something that's causing a lot of debate or interest. And it also brings up the concept that somebody who maybe didn't have a case before now does. And then, some certain point, this new law is no longer going to be new. So it's going to lose its power and excitement, but you can ride that wave for as long as it is new and exciting. So definitely worth, talking about. News. So there's something going on in the news that's gaining a lot of attention separately from the new laws. Like, for example, a few years ago when Tracy Morgan was in that bus accident, we had a client who wrote about that and got tons of great traffic and leads from that. Obviously, they're not generating as much traffic from that piece of content anymore, but it was very vital to them at the time. And then firm news. So things going on in your office, obviously this is interesting information for your readers, but also if you have a big case going on, this can be great link bait for social media news outlets. And then, of course, the great thing about if you have firm news going on and you're writing about it real time, you can then go back and include a case result. So after you've wrapped things up, how did it go? What happened? How can you kind of keep the momentum going from that firm news content piece? And then finally, content updates. So changes in circumstances can make an older piece of content you wrote fresh again. So for example, they may have found the cause of a truck accident that created a huge traffic incident, on the highway, or a missing person could be found, or there could be some maritime disaster that has, things in common with new news items, things that are happening now. So it's a good way to recycle and revitalize older pieces of content. And then your top level content. This is a lot like evergreen content, but you're going to have a little bit more focus on your SEO for these pages, since these are the pages that are going to show up for your vanity keyword searches. And when we say top level content, we really mean things like your homepage and your practice area pages. And these should be conversion focused. So you want to use these pages to drive people to complete an action. If someone is on these pages, that means these top level pages, that means they're probably looking for information about you or working with your firm, things that are really kind of less informational about the topics that you've been talking about with, how-to guides and what to do after you've been in a car accident. This is about working with you. This is how you show off that you're the best lawyer for that practice area. All right, now we're going to talk about questions to ask before you write. And these are important things to consider as you're writing content. It's not every single question is going to apply to every single piece of content, but they're good things to consider for every single piece of content. So number one, could this be in print? If it's not good enough for print, it's not good enough for your website or Google. If it's not something that you would want printed and shared, then why add it to your website in the first place? Does it seem like an expert wrote it? Pretty straightforward question. Does it seem like an expert wrote it, or are we kind of muddling through things here? Does it have insightful analysis? This is something that we see a lot of people struggle with. If you don't have anything to add to a story, do not bother telling it. There are a lot of people who will just kind of regurgitate the news story without providing any additional value or anything unique to the conversation, which brings us to the next question. Would you consider bookmarking it? And again, not every page is going to be something worth bookmarking, but if you want to create content that someone finds interesting or helpful enough to bookmark, this is something to consider. So it's things that maybe you would want to go back and look at later. I know I have bookmarked a few things that are just helpful resources for me when I'm working on content or I'm working on marketing stuff. Does it seem original? Pretty straightforward. Like the insightful analysis, don't repeat what somebody else has already said. Does it seem trustworthy? This one can be tricky because we encourage people to add a call to action to their content, especially if it's a really good piece of content. You want to drive people to that action, and that's really the overall goal. But you don't want to make it feel like a sales pitch or like you've got some sort of hidden agenda in your content. So make sure if you are adding calls to action, they make sense within the context of the content and they're actually going to be helpful things for these people, and it's not kind of a sneaky little, this is really about me selling you and not sharing information. So make sure your information is trustworthy. So we get a lot of questions about the best ways to write title tags, meta tags, and headlines. So I wanted to talk about this a little bit. And it might be simpler than I think a lot of people make it out to be. So title tags should be descriptive of the content that is on the page, which is a pretty easy concept, I think. Only about, oh sorry, I'm skipping ahead. Only about 60 characters of your title are going to show up in search results. It's okay to go a little bit longer if it's necessary for a meaningful title. Avoid keyword stuffing in your title. If it's relevant and it's important to the page, sure, include the keyword, but don't overdo it. Be concise because of the 60 character limit. And there you go, 60 characters. So your meta description or your meta tag is, if you use DSS, you know that there's that field to include your meta description. And we really encourage you to use this space because this is your elevator pitch for why somebody should click on your article rather than anybody else's article. You do not want to include a call to action in your meta description because this is going to be a waste of that, precious space, and no one is going to be convinced to call you just from the first page of Google where they're still trying to find the article that they actually want to click on. So don't waste that space on a call to action. Include that in the actual content of the page if that's what you decide to do. And then there are only 160 visible characters, more or less, generally speaking, for a meta tag. So your headlines are crucial because 8 out of 10 of your visitors are going to read your headline copy. Only 2 of those 10 will read the rest of your article. So you've got to have a great headline. It can be a little bit more creative and it can be longer than your title tag, but don't stuff a whole paragraph in there. And don't use the same wording as your title tag. That is a waste of space. You have an opportunity to really sell somebody here. And obviously you're speaking about the content, so you want to stay descriptive. So you can use variations of your title tag, but just get a little bit more creative, a little bit more descriptive. Make sure it's unique and useful. If you have the ability to create urgency in the headline, that's always a good strategy. And then this is kind of a recipe that works pretty well for coming up with headlines. So if you can't think of a headline, consider using a number or a trigger word and then an adjective plus a keyword plus a promise. So if you're talking about how to find the best lawyer, you might say 5 easy steps to find the best lawyer after an accident, or how you could easily find the best lawyer in less than 24 hours after an accident. So you're making a promise, you're including that trigger word or that number and the adjective and keyword that you're trying to target. So pretty good strategy to come up with a good headline. Don't use it every single time or you're going to wear it out, but definitely give it a try if you're struggling with a headline. How to find topics. This is something that I think a lot of people kind of have a tough time with. I know every now and then we'll kind of fall short. We're content planning and we're just all feeling a little bit exhausted and we're not quite firing on all cylinders. So finding content topics can be tricky. But there's a good couple ways to kind of find the topics that you want to talk about. So define your perfect clients and what do those kinds of people, what do they want to read and what questions do they have? Some people are a little bit more preferable to really in-depth information where other people prefer kind of snackable content that's just easy little bites of information. So identify who you're trying to speak to and what they want to read. Google it. If you have a topic in mind or search for a few topics related to your practice area, see what already exists. And then if you find something that interests you, figure out how you can create something unique and useful that adds context to the information that's already out there. You know, again, you don't want to repeat something that somebody else has already done. You don't want to regurgitate information. But if you can, you know, add your insightful analysis or add something new to it, this is a great opportunity. And then, you know, link to things that will strengthen your own content. So if you found relevant information somewhere else, don't just keep it to yourself and kind of steal it and say, these are my thoughts, but share it with the world. And then pay attention to questions that your clients are asking. They're the best source of content topics. Keep a list of common questions. That's a really good one that we've had great success with. And pay special attention to the uncommon questions, because those could turn out to be really good content pieces. So when you're working in a law firm or in a medical practice, you have a lot of complex concepts to laymen. So explain those things. You know, we are going to have trouble sorting through all this jargon, but you are able to explain these things in a way that anyone can understand. So those are great content topics. And then we say this all the time, but it's because it's so true. Case results and case stories are really powerful pieces of content. And it's not about the settlement amount or how much you won for your client, but it's the story that's going to resonate with your audience. How was the client feeling when they came into you? You know, what had they been experiencing before deciding to contact you? What did they experience throughout the process? And then what were they feeling after the process? So really great pieces of content. Storytelling is super powerful, and we definitely encourage you to do that. Okay, and then how to actually write content. So we always encourage you to create your content first and then come back with your headline and title. It's easy to pigeonhole yourself if you're trying to come up with a title first. You know, your writing might go in a different direction. You don't want to have a misleading title. So write the piece first and then come back to the headline and title. Be concise. So this is kind of, I feel like this particular slide is going to be interesting for a lot of people. It's better to use shorter sentences and paragraphs. Long sentences are going to scare off your unsophisticated readers, and they might feel a little bit overwhelmed. The interesting thing is that a lot of people are reading at an 8th grade level. So that's most Americans. So when I'm saying use these shorter sentences and paragraphs and to be concise, which is important, it's because you don't want to waste people's time, but it's also because a lot of people can feel intimidated by that stuff. So I don't know if you've ever looked for a recipe online. This is a great example of why being concise matters. It's one of those things where sometimes you've got to read a whole novel before you actually get to the recipe. So, you know, don't waste your readers' times. Give them what they're looking for up front. If there's more context that's required, you know, absolutely include that, but get to the point and don't ramble. Receptive vocabulary is essentially, that's words that we recognize. So if I don't understand a word, it's not part of my receptive vocabulary. Because most Americans are at an 8th grade reading level, we don't necessarily have the broadest vocabulary. So don't write above that reading level. And if it's, you know, becomes a challenge for your readers to follow what you're saying, they're going to give up. So the structure of your content should be easy for people to read. You've got to use like subheadings to break up your content and kind of map out those like milestones within the content. Bullet lists, break up those, you know, dense packets of wording, that sort of stuff. Keep structure in mind as you're writing what's going to be easy to look at, what's going to be easy to read. Explain necessary terms. So like we said, you know, you don't want to overstuff your content with legal jargon that nobody can follow, but if it's, you know, necessary, include it and then educate your reader on what that word means. And then video. These videos need to enhance your content, not replace it. So I think a lot of people kind of slap up a video on a page and don't include any additional content with it, but you're kind of missing an opportunity there. So be sure you're using video, but use it well. Okay, and then I kind of saved this slide till one of the last because I know it's the thing that people tend to cling to, and sometimes they can actually do more harm than good when you add SEO to your content. So we're going to talk about the right way to do it and how to handle this. There we go. Okay, all of it, all at once. So external links are important. I think that some people worry that external links are going to just kind of tell their readers that the most useful information is on another website, but that's not the case. You know, if you're referencing news articles or statistics, cite your source. It's important for people to know that they can trust you, and that helps build that trust. It's also, you know, the helpful information is key to good SEO. So building that trust, earning their trust, that's beneficial for you. Even if you think that guiding somebody to a different website is harmful to you, if it's improving their experience, it's not. It's actually beneficial to you. I would say I recommend you include those links to open in a new tab so that they don't accidentally, you know, move away from your website and then forget to come back. Calls to action. So it used to be common practice to cram all of your contact information into the final paragraph of every piece of content, but that is not the way to do it. You want to include strategic and relevant calls to action, or you're going to end up sounding like a used car salesman. No offense to used car salesmen. My dad was one, so I'm just saying you don't want to come across that way in your content. If you're writing a more informative piece of content that could really be relevant to anyone, that's when you don't want to force that really aggressive call to action. Try something a little bit softer, like share this on social media or download this free book. And then use a variety of calls to action. Don't stick to the same one repeatedly everywhere you go. If every piece of content says call us for a case evaluation, people are going to become blind to that eventually. So if you're not familiar with the term geotags, it's really just adding a geographic location to your content, and you should only be doing this if it makes sense. So, for example, Atlanta foot injuries from sports can be prevented does not make any sense because there is no magical secret foot injury that, you know, you can prevent specifically in Atlanta and nowhere else. So that comes across as deceptive to your readers because you forced that geolocation. So don't overdo it. And Google knows your location. There's a number of ways that Google's able to identify your location. So this is not really necessary. There is an exception though. Your top level pages like your homepage, practice area, about us pages include tags written to attract rankings for those phrases. So that's when it's totally acceptable. All of your other content should, you know, be focused more on long-tailed search, long-tailed keywords, and of course, keywords. I saved this one for last because I want to caution you about going crazy with keywords. If they're not natural and you overdo it, you're going to cause more harm by shoving keywords into your content. So please be mindful when you do this. We recommend writing your content and then going back to optimize your pages rather than starting with a keyword and trying to write a piece of content around that. So it's something you should do, but only when and where it makes sense in the context. So for example, we rank for web marketing for lawyers. We aren't going to add this phrase to every page. Only pages that are actually talking to lawyers about their web marketing and it makes sense as you read through the content, because otherwise it just comes across as keyword stuffing and we're gonna get penalized for that. So one of the things I recommend doing is if you're going to add it to a sentence, read the sentence out loud and see how it sounds. Does it roll off the tongue? Is it awkward and clunky? That's going to help you decide if the keyword fits into your content appropriately. And then finally, and I think this is an important one, you should not have to be hunting for opportunities to add your keywords. More often than not, if you've written a great piece of content, those keywords are just going to appear naturally. If you're writing about what to do if you've been charged with a DUI, the words DUI and lawyer and your state are probably going to appear in that piece of content without you having to go through and add it afterwards. So be really mindful not to stuff your content, or it's going to backfire on you, and your users in Google are just going to see it as spammy and unhelpful. So if you are an FWM client, you have access to the SEO tool, which can help you identify which keywords are working for you and help you with keyword research and help you identify which pieces of content are your best and which are, you could be doing better with, and different ways to improve. And it'll also give you information about your title tags, your meta descriptions, your headlines, kind of ranking those things and helping you identify what's working and what's not. So if you are an FWM client and you want access to this, you can reach out to customer service or reach out to me. We're happy to help get you set up with that. And if you're interested in having us help you with some content pieces, I'll share information on that as I send out the recording to this. We're, opening up our services for ad hoc content to people who are interested. So if you just need 1 or 2 pieces, or if you need a bunch of pieces, let us know. We're happy to help you with it. And that's really it. It's not rocket science. It's a little bit complicated, but if you follow these kind of basic steps, you're going to have great pieces of content. And if you have any specific questions, you can find me. It's molly@fosterwebmarketing.com. And thank you guys so much for joining me. There will not be a webinar next month. I will be out getting married. So I will see you guys when we return, and I'm looking forward to it. So thanks, everybody. Have a great day.